Hi, and welcome to the Leader's Edge, our weekly live interview show where Georgia Donaldson and I, Emily Chiwa, feature successful CEOs and professionals who are so kind to share their stories with us. We want to bring you awareness, inspiration, and leadership tips for you to action and to help you sharpen your competitive advantage and make a positive impact in your organization and community. Remember, if you are watching us live, you can leave a comment on LinkedIn if you want to ask a question for us to address on the show. So today's topic, people, empowering women in politics. What a topic. What a topic, right? And before we bring on Shirley Osborne, whom Georgia will properly introduce in a second, I want to bring some awareness to your mind. So consider the idea of women in leadership and politics, and in politics in particular. What do you think it has, why do you think, sorry, it has been so hard for women to succeed in winning the top spot in politics? It's very topical right now. So why do you think so? According to the latest data from the UN, only 19 countries have had a woman head of state, and 17 countries have had a woman head of government. At this rate, gender equality in the highest positions of power will not be reached for another 130 years. Imagine that. That's never, right? That's never. For all of us here, that's never. Then, even when women get to the top spot, do you think it is relatively harder for them to keep these positions? Are the expectations of women and men in the same position different just because of their sex? So, Georgia, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce Shirley so she can share her story and then some insights on this very important question this Monday morning.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Emily. Shirley, good morning and welcome. It's such a
Good
pleasure
morning. Good
having
morning.
you.
Thank,
Yes, I know we've been talking for a little while, and I'm happy that you're on this morning. So happy Monday morning.
thank
Folks,
you. Thank you.
the leader's edge. When we talk about leadership and we're talking about political leadership for women, and when we talk about this lady called Shirley Osborne, we're talking about firsts. She has been the first to do several things. And when we talk about Shirley Osborne, we talk about someone who's an author, and we talk about someone who has served in the Commonwealth. So Shirley is the immediate past Speaker of the Montserrat Legislative Assembly, and she was the first woman to chair a political party in Montserrat. How many of you knew that? Not many of you, but you're hearing that today on the Leader's Edge. And when she was that chair, the party was elected overwhelmingly under her leadership. And would you know that she has collaborated with organizations such as the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus? She has collaborated with the UN Women, and she is also part of the World Academy for Future Women, the university in China. Shirley has written for publications that include the Montserrat Reporter, the Jamaica Gleaner, the New York Daily News, and the Parliamentarian. And she's the author. Listen to the topic of this book, the title of this book: Tolerance is No Virtue, Ignorance, Appreciation, and the Human Story. And which critics have said they compare that now to the work called The Origins of Totalitarianism. You see the kind of league that she is in. And her most recent books, When Women Lead, or Some of the Myriad Reasons Why Many Women in Leadership Equal a Better World. Women in Leadership, a Better World. And here's another one. It's called Lead Good, a handbook for political women. Shirley, we could go on, but we want to hear from you. So now that I've set the stage and Emily has spoken about women in leadership and the very minute number of women who are leading at the very top in politics, talk to us about your story, Shirley. How did you get into politics and what are some of the issues that you faced?
Yeah. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Georgia. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Politics is a family affair to begin with, and actually, like pretty much every other woman who's ever been in politics, it's something that was opened up in my life by a man. The people who have been running politics for millennia. My father was a politician. My father was the premier, the chief minister of Montserrat for many years. My mother was his guide, his coach. She drafted his speeches and helped him, focus. My mother went to college and all that. My mother's a teacher. He didn't. He was a shipbuilder. And so he went to learn how to build ships. And then decided they went to England in the 50s, but his plan was to come back to work in Montserrat. And so they both came back, and I was a child when my father began. I was a very small child. And I would listen to the conversations they'd have in the house at night. I'd stay up late and listen. And it was always men. My mother was almost always the only woman in the room. But I listened to this conversation. As I grew older, I was fascinated by the conversations, the campaigns, the things they talk about. And also the idea that one of the things that struck me early on was the idea that when we make laws, when the government makes laws, it touches every single person in the country and every person who comes into the country. So there's nobody that it does not affect. And it's a kind of authority and power that as I grew older and I was aware of myself as a woman and that there were not many women, I kind of, wait a minute, what is this? Why is this? But politics has a bad reputation, doesn't it? And so my father said, you're not getting into politics. None of my children get into politics. Leave it alone. And actually, he allowed me to work in the background, which is fine.
Okay.
Women, that's fine for them. Women are doing that all along. And then, unfortunately, he died in 2011. And it was not on purpose. But in 2013, I got into active politics.
So when he was around, he didn't actively encourage you to go in politics. And 2 years after he passed, you jumped into politics.
Yes,
Good.
yes.
So you jumped in, Shirley, and you've had wonderful experiences and maybe not some so wonderful experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about maybe one experience that you've had that's not a positive experience.
Well, actually, I could jump right into this year.
Yes.
When I came into politics, I got into politics in 2013. There were a group of men was starting a new party, and my brother was one of the members, and he said, come help me campaign. I came into the campaign, and there were a couple of other women, but I noticed the women were not doing anything. They bring notes and they have piles of notes, but it was the men who made decisions. And somehow I ended up, I said, let me help you with communications, because you need somebody to be putting stuff out and managing your communications with people. And then along the way, within a matter of weeks, I became the chair. And again, that was largely because the men thought that they should be more involved in the campaigning and the going out there, but the administrative stuff, let's let the women do it. But I had a lot of fun with that. But the same party that I ran with in 2014, I was when the elections came in 2014, I chaired the party, we won, and it was beautiful. I ran as a candidate with that party this year and did not win. And the reasons I got were, you're a woman. I was not allowed to lead the party. Lots of people, men and women, said, how come you're not the leader of the party? Why aren't you leading the party? But the inner circles of the party were not happy with a woman leading. And so at some points it was, do I even stay in this party or not? Mm-hmm. But the underlying reason for being in there was Montserrat. You know the condition Montserrat's in. Montserrat needs real support politically and otherwise. And so I stayed. But all throughout this campaign, it was, you're a strong woman. Shirley's going to change everything. Shirley's going to disrupt. Shirley's going to do this. Shirley's going to do that. And so I lost the election because within the party, I was, put it nicely, my leadership was not supported, and put it that way.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I'm curious as to, like, I'm sure this is where George is going. Like, if we were to dig down a little bit into why. So, although there were a lot of positives that some people saw you could bring, is it that the amount of change felt too much, that maybe the way the changes would be made, if you are in fact someone who disrupts, would be too unsettling? What do you think? And I mean, maybe either from your feedback or what you actually think, Shirley, were some of the underlying things that that probably other women fall victim to, quote unquote. I don't
Yeah.
want to say victim, but like fall, that happens to others that may create this harmony when it comes to putting women in these positions or supporting them to get there.
But let me tell you what one person told me. She said to me, Shirley, of all your father's children, you're the one most like him, but you are not him because you are not a man. So I have the
Wow.
characteristics. And as a matter of fact, the man who eventually did win the elections this year had told me before, you're just like your father. And I said, in which ways? He said, you're just like your father. Let's just leave it at that. Because what happened was I have always been, as a person in my private life, I am one of those people who I question myself, I challenge myself, I push myself, and I tend to be outspoken. I think that for better or for worse, positives and negatives are best managed when we can be clear about them. You look at them, look them in the face, see them for what exactly they are, and then speak about them, handle them as that. And so I think that the issues with Montserrat right now are issues that need to be addressed like that. We need to state them as they are and have the courage to address them with the force or the quiet that they need. And so I say things that make people concerned. But on the other hand, when men say the same things, it's fine. People have told
I
me
was,
you should, that's
yes.
the right thing, but it's a woman. It should be a man saying that or a man doing that. And so, yeah.
I was just going to raise that point, Shirley,
Yeah.
because we like when men are decisive. We
Mhm.
like when men change things. We like when men disrupt things. And so when a woman comes and she's decisive, she changes things and she's disruptive, there's an issue. Is
There's
that
an
what
issue.
you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes. It's a big
Okay.
issue. And men and women, by the way, women also
Yeah.
have a problem with that.
But I'm
Uh-huh.
going to say it's like we're socialized to accept certain rules. And
Mm-hmm.
somehow it's so ingrained in all of us that
Mhm.
it's sometimes really difficult to accept
Yes.
this
Yeah.
way of being from a woman.
Yes.
Um, it's a very odd conundrum, and we're supposed to be empowering women in politics, but in leadership generally. I mean, I just think too that although we say that, I'm hoping that women and men alike maybe start to critically think about what does that mean. Is it like an underlying mistrust of what women can do, or is it because the change and all of that, as you said, Georgia, is
Mm-hmm.
it's fine if it's fine, quote unquote, if it's coming from a man. Even though I think sometimes in politics people tend to veer away from wanting too much change because they're afraid that they would
Yeah.
lose
Yeah.
in the long run. Even though if it's the better thing, it may
Yeah.
appear it may be the better thing to for the country or the organization, whatever. It's how do we make this palatable and whatnot, and sometimes there are lots of compromises, but
Yeah.
that's a story for another that's a topic for
Yeah.
Yes.
another.
One of the things I thought of too, because I said, okay, maybe it's only at the political level where we have so few women leading. But when I thought about Fortune 500 companies and I did a little research, I recognized that only 10% of these Fortune 500 companies are led by women.
Yes.
At
Yes.
middle manager level, you have lots of women well represented at middle management and some maybe at the executive level as well. But when you look at the top, the head of the organization, the CEOs, just about 10% of those companies. So is there a plateau for women in leadership and particularly in political leadership? Have you been seeing that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I look around. I did when I was as a Speaker of the House for 5 years. And I did a lot of traveling because Montserrat, like Jamaica, Trinidad, and all of the Anglophone Caribbean, are part
Mhm.
of the Commonwealth. And so I did a lot of work with these countries, developing and developed countries. And there are always lots of women in the room, but we were senators and speakers and ministers, prime ministers and heads of government. No. And I think it's as far as the Caribbean is concerned, we sort of mirror the rest of the world. I mean, a lot of what comes to us comes from out there, just because of our history and so on. And so we have, just like Emily said, we have the same socialization. Women are fine. We like women in the room, but we just don't want them leading. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, if you've ever spent any time listening to or even hearing people talk about the House of Commons in England, it's considered a rowdy, misbehaving set of men. But a few years ago, I asked one man, got in a conversation, one British politician, about when women came into the House. And he said, as a matter of fact, when women came in, as more women came in, the tone in the House changed. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't know if it's the colors or the women's demeanor, but it changed. We are not as bad as we used to be, he said. However, you remember when Mrs. Thatcher was the prime minister, you know what she went through. She was called the Iron Lady and all that. And then come right down to Liz Truss and Howell. That was, she lasted not a very long time.
Not long.
Yeah. No, and it's the same everywhere. We want the decisions being made, but we are so used to men being in office, men being the one in leadership, that it just is more it's more comfortable for us, and we just prefer it that way. And so yes, there is a plateau, and we have to keep pushing that, because of course women bring skills that we all need. They're complementary.
Of course.
They're complementary, and we need in business and in politics, in academia, the things that women bring.
Shirley and Emily, maybe one of the research that we need to do now is to look at the cultures of the countries that have women as leaders. Because if we were to think of just a few of them, maybe Italy, Hungary, Honduras, I think. These are some of the countries. Finland, Estonia. What's unique about them, where they have now made women leaders of those countries? Maybe there's something unique about them.
Well, if you look at the Scandinavian countries, what they have done is that they have radically, over decades, the last few decades, they have radically changed their laws to support women. Things as basic as having a creche in office buildings and in the parliament buildings. They have made life easier for women. And it might sound basic, but in some places it began literally separating the bathrooms that men and women use. For most of these countries, especially the ones that have continued, because there are the one-offs, right? There always are. But the countries that have managed to maintain this and have women recurring are most of the countries who have signed it into law, that women are equal, that women have all the rights, and they have educated and informed their populace. And it's not that there's no sexism in those countries. It still is. There still is. But people more and more have begun to accept women in these roles, because it goes right through school, right through everything. It's a re-education, a resocialization.
Yes. If we come right back home to the Caribbean, we have Mia Mottley is the only one in Barbados. Is there any other Caribbean country that has a woman leader?
There's the Cayman Islands right now. Juliana O'Connor. She has been the deputy premier. She has been the minister for years and years and years. And how she became the premier it wasn't even election, it was a system of the men were misbehaving. And they couldn't quite make up their minds. And she was elected. She was the members made her premier. But and we had Miss Simpson in Jamaica, and that was it.
Yes.
Well, we had Kamala Prasad as well.
Yes. Okay. Good. Yeah. Well, Emily, we need to come to a wrap. Yes.
Well, so I was wondering, in terms of what would you like to say, Shirley, to people women who are in politics or who are considering politics because of whatever reason, whether they just want to make the countries that they operate in a better place, or make an impact in the world, or have a vision that they wish to share. I'm curious as to what would you say to our young or not so young women who have been around and, skirting, around the borderlines, but interested in getting in and staying in. Like, what would be some words of wisdom or empowerment you want to share with them?
Sorry, Shirley, don't tell them run the other direction.
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I'll just stay with it. I mean, I worked with young people, for example, in the youth parliaments in the Commonwealth and in the Caribbean, and there always were girls in there. There were women in there, and so my advice to them always was keep going, keep pushing, and don't pull back. Don't hold yourself back because to make it comfortable for someone. You know, the classic example is we teach girls how to, you know, not win at tennis so that boys can win. Don't do that. Don't do that. But on the other, along with that, educate and inform yourself about not just your country, but the geopolitics of the world. Geopolitics is really, really important, especially for the Caribbean. And then try to, the idea that politics is bad has to be dispelled somehow, some way. And I think it comes back to women to do that. And that book, Lead Good, that's what it was about. How to be a good leader of good, how to lead good things, you know, and not get caught up, because power has a way of tripping us up. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, when you get to the point where everybody says yes, 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 sir, yes, ma'am, it can play games with your mind. But we have to be careful not to get caught in that. And I think that's what has tripped up a lot of men. And so if women stay aware, just stay aware of what the mission is. And the mission is the country, the mission is the improvement, the better standard of living, the better quality of life. Just focus on that and be yourself. Don't give yourself up. Don't hold yourself up. Don't pretend to be stupid just to make the men feel brighter. No. But there are tactful ways to go about that. Yeah. There are ways to do this, to communicate what you need to communicate without making anyone feel less. I think without having them feel threatened probably is a good word.
Yeah.
Emily, this looks like a part 2 is coming.
Oh boy. So
my word. Shirley, this has been so impactful.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for your share. I think everybody should when I was researching Shirley, I came upon the book, and I think everyone should read that book, whether you're in politics or not. Because, you know, when we talk about the Leader's Edge, we're talking about impacting wherever you are, your community, your organization. Sometimes leading in politics starts with the community organizing, right?
Yes.
A lot of times that's where it starts, right? So you know, we always encourage people to get involved, do something for the community where you are in. Make a positive change however you can, in whatever small way you can, whether it's the environment, whether it's the youth, whether it's women, whatever. And, you know, be aware of these issues like what we just raised. You know, I think sometimes we just don't talk about it enough.
That's true.
It's like we all have a sense that this is what we think about women and when it comes to leading, etc. But we don't really air it, and we, you know, it sort of festers because it remains the status quo without being examined. So examine if you do have challenges with women leading. Why? Think about it. Are they rational? Or is it just more what you just think in your head? You know, look at the track record of the women, and women yourselves. You know, go for it. Do what you think you can do. Go for it. You know.
And Emily, there may be women who are in the corporate space who are thinking, "Oh, can I leave the corporate space and go into politics?" Explore it. You never know. Talk to someone about it. Yes.
Yeah, and understand that
may help you along the way. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics in the corporate space too. So it's about learning to play politics. Yes, there's a lot of politics in corporate.
So they would be familiar.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's been such a pleasure, Shirley. Thank you for taking the time. Georgia, always a pleasure. So we will leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please leave comments in LinkedIn or wherever you see this. Let us know what you thought. And and jump in. If you are thinking of leading or want some change, let's not just stop talking. Let's do. Let's do.
There Absolutely. We go. Just do. Right. Thank you, ladies. Have a wonderful week.
You too. You too.